Good evening, and welcome to Riderpiece Theater. Me, Alistair Dayhawk, and tonight, me proud to present Kamen Rider Gotcha, episode 29, the continuation of the Haunted Village. So, Hotaru and the rest of the village folk heard the screams, and the last scene from the last episode was screaming and Hotaru staring at the camera and be like, "Oh, it's not over." I have to admit though, like all the time, Hotaru is cringy as hell. But anyways, moving on. So the village folk and the Alliance went outside to check to see what the hell happened. And lo and behold, they're greeted by a bunch of legs sticking out. Just a pair of legs. And it was the legs of the village elder. And mind you, the last time I checked, right? The village elder was wearing pants, right? So in this scene, you see his legs sticking out, but there's no pants. And his upper body, it's buried. And everybody was shocked to see, a pair of legs sticking out. Makes sense, right? And the village folk, got the village elder out of this weird, awkward situation. And Kudo checked his pulse to make sure that he is alive. And he is. And then next thing you hear, another weird sound. So they followed the sound, and one of the land sharks got attacked, and he is posing as a scarecrow. Yeah, a scarecrow. And luckily, this victim had his clothes on, and Kudo, of course, makes sure that he is okay, he is alive, just unconscious, but Kajiki all of a sudden is like being all paranoid and just being his weird, awkward self, right? And he is pretty much pointing the finger at everybody, assuming that there is a killer out there. And Kudo was like, dude, he's alive, he's not dead. But Kajiki was not listening, and he was pointing the finger at his old master, Hoshino, and Hoshino just came out from the crowd and just hits him, telling him that he is a moron. And I mean, he is a moron, let's be honest. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But, Kajiki being, this detective and pointing fingers, and which led the village folk getting paranoid and assuming that Hoshino is nothing more than a fraud, that he is the one behind these attacks. So they decided to not only lock him up, but also Kajiki up. And so the villagers take them away, and then we go to this opening scene after the opening credits, and you see the villagers just sticking Hoshino and Kajiki into it. This is not a jail, but it's just a random building, and they just throw them in there. I think it's just a storage room, and they lock them up. And Hotaru and Renge were like, "I don't think it's them. I think the real culprit is still out there somewhere, and we just have to find him." So they both went in search of any more clues and hopefully find the so-called killer, air quotes. And Kudo decided to stay behind just to check on Hoshino and Kajiki, and of course keeping an eye on the villagers as well. So they went off to their separate ways, and then you have Kudo talking to Renge's Nana, and Nana asked, like, where's Renge at? I don't see her. Oh, she's cool. She's with Hotaru right now. She will come back, as, don't worry about it. And of course, Kudo pointed out, like, you're so overly protective of her, aren't you? And Nana had this talk with Kudo that, ever since she was a little girl, Renge, Um, she's always been scared of everything, so to speak. And we get into this flashback of one of those moments. And, ever since then, she's been Renge's protector. And it also tells Kudo that it doesn't matter if she is an adult now, she'll always be my baby girl. And I thought it was a cute moment. And I realized that, hey, I have a family member who acts that way. I'm older now, and my mom is the type of person that sees me as her baby boy, and it doesn't matter how old I am. She always treats me as such. She's not overprotective of me, but she has this thing where she gets all worried if I'm like late at night, that sort of thing, and parent stuff, right? And I've noticed that this only happens towards women. Men, not so much. But with women, especially, they have this thing where, no matter how old you are, you always be my baby and that sort of thing. And so it's nice to have a bit of realism in this show. Something that I craved for. But anyways, so Kudo and Nana are talking, and then we get to the next scene with Renge and Hotaru. And long story short, Renge is determined to save the village, and Hotaru being Hotaru, so that is your gotcha. And I realized it took me this long to figure out that is your gotcha means, so that is your dream. That is your goal. And I'm at that point where that catchphrase, the gotcha thing, is starting to wear thin on me. It's getting tiring. I get it's the main thing for the show, but it's just the way Hotaru says it up to now. I'm just, great. But of course, it's just, either here or there. I'm just telling you guys. So they have their moment, and then Hotaru gets this phone call from Kudo telling them that, hey, you need to return because the killer, air quotes, has struck again. So they made it to the crime scene, and the second the second land shark got attacked. And again, just like what happened with the village elder, this guy, half naked, is having this weird pose. And I have to give kudos to the actor because God only knows how long he had to do the pose. Because I saw in the background he was moving, like twitching just a little bit, trying to stay still. And it appears to be very hard, but I mean, hopefully it didn't take like more than 3 takes, hopefully. But kudos to him. So the killer, air quotes, has struck. And Hotaru was like, okay, we need to go back to the storage room to make sure Kajiki and Hoshino are okay. They go there, and guess what? The killer struck them too. So they have this weird pose together, and luckily they have their clothes on, and they have this ridiculous pose. And Hotaru, well, before that, Kudo makes sure that they're okay first. Check the pulses, then okay, they're alive, they're okay. And it's just dumb, typical Hotaru moment where he is almost like in pain, crying, assuming that Kajiki, his best friend, has died. And Kudo is like, dude, have you been listening? He is unconscious. Relax. But he just goes on and on. Oh, I wish I could have been a better friend. Oh, I wish I could have done something for you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Jesus. And then Renge took this opportunity to take the beads that contains the 5 chemis and just took the beads away from Hoshino. Because can you imagine if he was walking about the kids will have a terrible time convincing this man to please, give the beads. So luckily for the Alliance, they took the beads while he is frozen. So after Hotaru is crying his eyes out, assuming that Kajiki is dead, even though Kudo said otherwise, Kudo sees weird sister number 1, who's been played by a 9-year-old, and decides to follow her. So we get to the next scene where they both talk, and Kudo asks like a straightforward question: are you behind these attacks? And of course, number 1 says, I don't know about these incidents. It's like I can either confirm or deny that I'm behind these attacks. Which leads number 1 asking 2 questions. What's your reason for living, and what's inside your head? And she didn't quite answer the first question, but she did answer the second question, where she's like, can you forgive your past in order to move on and have a second chance in life? Somewhere around those lines. Which makes number 1 be like, I still hate your guts. And she just walks away and disappears. And then lo and behold, Ace attacks. For those who've seen the episode and saw this Amalgam, you already know why I gave it the nickname Ace. So Ace, the Amalgam, attacks, and luckily Hotaru is there, and he transforms and tries to attack this Amalgam, but all his attacks are not landing, and for some reason Hotaru is like, wait, something is off about this Amalgam. I just don't know what it is yet. And he transformed back to one of his older forms, but even still his attacks are not landing, and Ace disappears. It escapes. And then Hotaru's like, okay, where did it go? And Renge gets a couple of like flashbacks of the victims, and she's like, I think I know where this Amalgam is headed. And we get into this cutscene of the kids walking up the steps, and Renge is telling, Kudo and Hotaru, like, hey, these victims that were attacked with the weird poses, they were giving off this direction, and their point of direction is leading towards where I think this place is and where the Amalgam is heading towards. And Hotaru was like getting tired, and he was like, can we just use the train? We could just hop on the train and we get there in seconds. And Kudo's like, no, what's wrong with you? And there was this scene that they're just talking and walking up the steps, and they're just like, but you can tell that Hotaru was getting tired. Like, he is not ready to have this pilgrimage up to one of the shrines, which I find it funny because both of them were like bickering already. And so they made it to the shrine where we get to where we met Renge and Nana for the first time. And the kids spot Nana, and Renge was like, oh, I didn't know that you were here. Like, what's going on? And Nana explained that I'm the only one who comes here for prayer. I take care of the shrine because in the past people used to come here. Now I'm just the only one, so I'm taking care of it. And then Ace, the Amalgam, appears, and everyone was screaming, of course, and Hotaru transforms into Platinum, and of course they have their fight. And again, Hotaru is like, what is wrong with this Amalgam? You're way different than the others. What is it? And they continue on with their fight. And lo and behold, Ace the Melgime decides to separate the heroes. So Ace decides to separate the women, send them into the dark dimension, while it deals with Hotaru. So the women get trapped in this dark dimension where they get greeted by this giant eyeball. And of course, all three of them are scared. Kudo, on the other hand, she is kind of unfazed because she's a fan of horror. I'm surprised she wasn't even laughing or smiling in that scene, but you know. And Grandma steps in. Hey, I will protect my granddaughter from you, you eyeball. And she decides to do her thing, but no, she got spooked because, of course, the eyeball was roaring at her and like, ooh, you know. And she hid behind Renge. And this is where Renge gets this flashback of her, you know, being protected by her Nana. And she said, you know, you protected me for all these years, so it's my turn to protect you. And she uses her ring of power. She gets into her alchemy uniform, and she just goes in between them and yells out, like, you're not hurting anybody here, you eyeball, you know, and I will defeat you. I used to be scared of everything, but not anymore. And the beads that she had, you know, she was wearing, they were reacting to her courage, and the Kemis were like, hey, you know, let us help you. And of course, Renge obliges, like, hey, let us work together to escape this place. So she captures all 5 Kemis and use their powers to not only to defeat the eyeball, but also escape from that dark realm. While they're doing that, you get to see this awesome fight that the suit actors did with Platinum and Ace Melgime, and they're fighting each other for a moment on land, and then they both fought in the skies and then going down to the earth. So I have to say, the fight between those two, I like it. I enjoyed it a lot. The stunts, especially from the Ace Melgime, they were great. So again, kudos to you suit actors. Kudos to you guys. Bravo. I enjoyed it a lot. So Hotaru was again asking the Melgime here, like, what is it that you want? What's going on? And gets no answer, so the fight continues. And so we move on to pretty much towards the end here, because the women escape. They go back to the shrine, and the fight went back to the shrine, and the Melgime got cornered, and the Melgime just stood there and like, yeah, I'm ready to take it, go on. And Hotaru was like, so you want me to end this here? Okay. So he does the final shot and does the rider kick onto Ace and just punched a hole through this mountain wall, right? And gets destroyed. Now, the shocking part of all of this is that the Melgime isn't what you thought. Because as you know, when you turn into a Melgime, you need to have a human host with negative energy and to fuse it with any other Kemi. But not this time. Somehow the Kemi fused itself to a stone statue of a fox, and lo and behold, it became the Nine-Tails Melgime. How? I have no idea. I assume Kemis can only bond with living things. This is the first time I hear that a Kemi can bond to an object. But either way, we see that it was a stone statue, a miniature stone statue, and of course Hotaru captures the Nine-Tails Kemi, does the cringy part. And then here comes a hot spring. Hot water is spewing out of that crater Hotaru made, and it's like, wait, is that a hot spring? And everybody was in shock, like, I didn't know there was a hot spring hidden in this mountain. And Renge was like, is there a possibility that this Kemi was trying to tell the village folk that, hey, there is a hot spring? And it makes sense because if a Kemi fuses with an object, it's difficult for them to communicate. So the only way to communicate was to do all this weird poses with the victims. So, oh, okay. Okay, makes sense. And so Renge and pretty much everybody was happy that not only they captured all the Kemi cards, pretty much 6 of them, right? And they discovered a hot spring, which means that the village is safe, which means, people will come in and visit the village. It's like a tourist attraction at this point. So the village is safe. So we move on to the last scene where the villagers are just happy that the village is safe, no more land sharks. They thank, our heroes. And you see Miro Sensei there, so you already assumed that he was about to erase their memories or already did erase their memories, so he is there. And we get to see a moment between Renge and Nana, and Nana tells her granddaughter that, hey, I'm so proud of you. You don't need me to protect you anymore. You're an adult, And Renge was surprised, like, wait a minute, like, you remember still? And Nana was like, remember what? Oh. But I think there's some things you cannot erase. And I think Nana knows in her heart that, of course, she will always be, her little girl, but she doesn't need protection at this point in time, And she will stop being overprotective. And that's a nice lesson to have, It's hard when you're a grandparent and a parent and to see your kids grow up no longer in need of your protection, and you have this, this is my little boy, this is my little girl, I need to protect them, they're always going to be my babies. But it will come the time when you realize that at this point in time, like, I think it will be okay. It's going to be hard, but at least it'd be like, you will always be my, my little girl, regardless. So, but she will be less overprotected towards her. That's the important thing. And all's well that ends well. Well, not really, because Hoshino is kicking and screaming that his beads no longer work, his power is gone, and Kajiki was like, hey, well, you want to be detectives? We were good detectives, so why not just do detective work and solve the unknown mysteries and all that stuff? And Hoshino's like, oh, okay. And so the duo leaves without saying goodbye, and pretty much the show ends with Renge and Nana just walking away together and ask, like, hey, will you come back to visit me? And Renge was like, of course, you're my favorite Nana. I will always come and see you, especially now that, the village is saved and they have their, grandma, granddaughter moment, and they just walk away. And I thought it was very cute and nice. Well, that's it, everybody. That's the end of the episode. This episode, I enjoyed it because the creative turned down the goofiness quite a bit. Of course, with the weird, frozen poses and 2 victims being half naked was a bit over the top. But I enjoyed this part than the first part here and the last episode. So, and it had a very important lesson. And Renge pretty much proved to her Nana that I'm gonna be okay. I'm not the same scaredy cat as I was when I was a child. Especially after everything she's been through. Like, you would think that it will change her, and it did. And Hotaru being cringy Hotaru, and Kudo, is like being the only sane one, because she was like checking pulses, making sure it's okay, but no one was listening to her. Like, hey, they're okay, they're unconscious, but you have these two boys being over the top, assuming that they're dead, and it's just oh, they're morons. What can you do? But I really did enjoy the show. The fighting scene between Ace the Mel guy and Platinum Gotcha. Kudos to you, suit actors. Keep up the good work. I really enjoyed the fight, especially Ace Mel guy with these fighting stunts. I'm impressed. But hey, that is it. Guys, give me your thoughts about episode 29. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Give a like if you like it, and please subscribe. And also, did I miss anything? Because even though I have my notes in front of me, you never know, right? So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all on the other side of Oblivion. Happy Easter, everybody. Johnny!